everybody would think this would be a negative word, but you have to learn this is actually a spiritual, sacred word. Adversity means toward the universe to go. I don't know if we can get the bottom of the slide there. No, I guess not. Anyway, adversity, that's what the word means. When you're in adversity, remember, it's that which is directing you toward the universe. Below it is another sacred word called covenant. And this is a church of the covenant. And covenant means is when you go with the universe. You're in step in your life with the universe, you have a covenant with the universe. I actually have Jane Goodall, who went to live in Africa with the chimpanzees, and she went in, she didn't have a weapon, she lived in the middle of the jungle back then when there were real jungles back in the 50s. And she said she was never worried about her personal safety because she had a covenant with the universe. She's there to study the chimpanzees and help them survive into the future. And she said, I know nothing will happen to me. I've written a play. I'm hoping we were talking about starting maybe an artist studio. Let's have present a play one Sunday, and maybe we can get some actors in it. So it's called the UU Covenant Church. And it's a little play about the word covenant, which I think is important. Anyway, that's the depressing part of today's sermon. Now we're going to go to the comedy section. Oh, any questions on Dark Night of the Soul? Okay. All right. Anybody heard of that concept before, St. John's? Just curious. You've heard it? It's from John of the Cross, the Dark Night of the Soul. This is an old tradition. Okay. All right. This is from the New Scientist. This is a weekly magazine. I really enjoy it. It's good science, it's entertaining, and it covers all subjects. And on the cover here, they say, is humanity getting stupider? And the answer is, yeah, it's really getting a lot stupider. And today, I'm going to share that stupidity with you. This is the metaphysics issue, and right below it, the flaw in the thinking right away. How science answers philosophy's deepest question. Actually, science's deepest questions. We don't answer philosophy's deepest question. And the word metaphysics is interesting. It didn't exist until Plato came along. I call him the first great idiot. And science's job is to describe all of reality, right? If it's real, it's the job of science to describe it. There is no metaphysics. There is nothing outside of science. This idea, there's something outside of science, began with Plato, which is why I call him the great idiot. So let's start at the top there. Right away, you should suspect this is really stupid. The first question is, do I exist? Now, the interesting thing, if we had a 4 or 5-year-old, and if we said to the 4 or 5-year-old, do you exist? They're going to say, of course I exist. I want to read the opening sentence of this article. The short answer is, you don't exist. Let's continue on. The next question they have is, what is reality? Now, this is an important word. In fact, the word reality is in my first book. It's one of the most important concepts. If you want to understand how everything works, you got to understand the concept of real. And real is that which never changes. So what I'm telling you now isn't real, but it is real now because it's history. And history never changes. So reality is what happened. Or, if you want to be entertained, I put a New Scientist issue over there. That was a New Scientist issue that came out about 1 year after this article. And if you read that issue, it has 10 articles telling you all the things reality might be. But if you're not happy, and it tells you this, if you're not happy with any of the concepts we're telling you what reality might be, it might be something totally different, which of course means about once or twice a year they come out with an issue to tell you what reality is. They make money. So basically, this is how stupid science has got. It's here's one of my favorites. Do I have free will? I've seen this debate take place for a long time, and if you want to take part in it, there's only one thing you need to know. You can choose whichever side of the free will debate you wanted to take. You know, you're free to choose. You can decide you have free will, or you can choose to decide you don't have free will. So if you enter the debate, just remember that one basic point. I don't know. Basically, once again, it's metaphysics. It's outside. Scientists don't discuss that. Now, here's why am I here? That's a good question, right? What is the purpose of existence? They actually have no clue in the article, and they kind of admit that. And the sad thing is, and science now has two groups. They're split. The people that control science now, and if you look it up, and I told you this before, say that there's two atomic theories. I pointed out that last year. Before the cosmos, there's either something or nothing, right? So the only theory most scientists accept now is there was nothing before the cosmos, and that it's a pointless universe, and there's no purpose in life, and that's fine. But the problem is they've mandated that this is the only theory in science now. So I'm pointing out that the unfortunate thing is this first science theory, which came out 2,500 years ago, says life does have a purpose. And that's what each of us has to decide, right? Does each person have a purpose? It's strange. On the front cover there, I pointed out my vocation is, and it's really strange, I have a mystic name, and it's on the front cover on the first slide. And I pointed out Ray Mcknight is a light small, Mick is small, in the dark night. And so what I'm doing is talking about the dark night of the soul as part of my book. So I'm fulfilling my vocation of talking about the dark night of the soul. A couple of questions here. What is time? That's a good question. Somebody should buy the guy a watch. Thoreau said it best, time is what you experience, right? Why would you talk about time? You live in time. You know, do you need a definition of what you live in? Thoreau said time is the stream that we swim in. So once again, it's an interesting subject, time. Time is relative. It's a little more complex than it appears, but it's really not that complex. You live in time. What more is there to know? Here's two good questions. Where do good and evil come from? Well, in my book, I point out that the universe appears to be a source of conscience. In other words, the conscience you have is an energy field that's directing you to behave in conscientious ways. So that is the one answer. Where does good come from? It's actually embedded in the universe, and that the moral arc of the universe bends towards justice, a famous UU saying. Where does evil come from? Anybody know? This one's an easy one. Good, I'm telling you all where evil comes from, right? Okay, I had a mystic experience, and I asked the universe. I already knew, but one night I asked the universe, and I'm looking at the cosmos with a telescope in my mind, right? I'm getting taken on this trip, and I'm seeing the cosmos, and it's like, do you see evil yet? Right. And I'm looking all through the cosmos. And then the telescope turns around and looks at Earth and blows up Earth, and it says, do you see evil yet? So basically, if you want to find evil in the cosmos, you pretty well have to come to Earth. So that's basically where that comes from. Let's see, what is consciousness? Well, basically, do I exist and what is consciousness are the same thing. Alex and I discussed that. But if you're conscious, you exist, right? That's your essence of your existence. Consciousness is the essence of your existence. Now let's come to the big question, and let's approach this scientifically. Can I know if God is real? I don't know. Steve, can we know if God is real? Just as a scientist. Just curious. Yes, that's a fair option. But to take this question scientifically, we're going to go back to the atomic theory, the first part of the atomic theory. Before the cosmos, what were the possibilities? Either something or nothing, right? Well, if there was nothing before the cosmos, you can't know that. So that's half the answer. The other part is if there's an energy force that exists before the cosmos. Now I'm on to my next slide. You want to show the next slide? Now, if there is an energy force that existed before the cosmos, and which is still there, then yes, you can know that, because any energy form that exists has to be real for you somewhere, somehow. And this is, as I told you, this is the most important message from science in the 21st century. And I don't know if you remember, I said this is actually a picture of where we live. Remember, we live in a galaxy. And this is a picture of how the galaxies flow in the cosmos. And I told you last week that if you throw all the galaxies in a bathtub and you pull the plug, that's the motion you see. And you can see it's called the great attractor. There seems to be a force influencing the flow of the cosmos. Now, the modern scientists all have magic beans they call dark energy. And they said, well, since there's no before the cosmos and all that exists, this is all of existence, there must be these magic beings inside the cosmos that's making it do this. So they call them magic beans dark energy. And they're still looking, and lots of articles on dark energy, what it is, how they're going to find it, the whole thing. Because once again, they aren't allowed, actually, most scientists aren't allowed to think that there's possibly something before the cosmos. Now, Einstein said, if you look at the cosmos and you look at the outside energy, he said it's obvious that what we see is a small part of a tail of a very large lion. So basically, he's just telling you that the amount of energy outside of the cosmos is vastly larger than the amount of energy inside the cosmos. That's the only way you can see this vortex pattern flow. The word vortex actually came from the ancient Greeks, that they looked at the sky and said, geez, everything's in a vortex flow. And there's some people that have a type of mind that are photographic images, so they see what the sky looks like and they can remember and they can compare it. And you get that vortex pattern in the sky. So that's describing that the energy outside is much larger than this energy inside, and it's actually moving you around right now. So can you know the universe exists? You actually do know it exists because you're already in that flow. So the answer is yes. The Buddhists said it best. Can you know that the universe is real? They called it the whack on the side of the head. Everybody knows that about Buddhism, right? That every once in a while you have a moment in life where the universe just whacks you on the head. And that's how you know the universe is here. So I'm going to tie together what happened in my life. I was figuring this out up until about 10 years ago. Then it all came together, and then I understood. But like in my life, I had 3, 4 big dark night of the souls. I had one huge one at one point. And it was the universe sent me a message and told me what was wrong. My biggest one, I got a few minutes. Anyway, my worst one was when I'd been married and had 3 kids and living in Key West, and I'm getting a divorce now after 20 years. So I'm like, we'd kind of separated, and it all made sense. So intellectually, it was like a good idea. Unfortunately, my intellect and my emotional weren't connected, and I just plunged into this dark night of the soul, just about as deep as you can go, Dante's Inferno. And I get a voice, and it said, come see me in Washington, D.C. And so I didn't really want to go to Washington, D.C., but this is, I've had the voice a few times, and it's called the Jonah syndrome, that most of the times when you get it, the first time you ignore it, then you learned out you shouldn't have ignored it. So I'd done that path. So I get the voice the second time, and I'm like, I don't want to go to Washington, D.C., because I was going to do this course in Los Angeles, and I'd never been there. And there was one in Washington, and okay, I'll go to Washington, D.C. And it was about a few weeks after I made that decision. I was studying for my boards in emergency medicine, and I was busy in Key West, and I had practice, and I had patients in the hospital, and I was president of the Monroe County Medical Society, and I was on the board of the Democratic Party in Key West, and I did a lot with my kids too. So back then, I was actually 2 or 3 people. I don't even know how I did all that I did. But I totally had lost all function. But when I got on the plane to head to Washington, D.C., I knew exactly where to go. And I knew because the Holocaust Museum had just opened up. And I knew, and I went to the Holocaust Museum, beautiful day, and went through it. And I was actually pretty well healed, just going through the Holocaust Museum, because it's a healing place. And the interesting thing about the Holocaust Museum is when you, at the end, I looked at the notes of all the kids, 10, 12, 13, that wrote notes about it. And it was, wow, neat. This was very inspiring. It's a very positive experience, kind of interesting. You can go to the darkest night of the soul, and you can have one of your most positive experiences, which these kids, and which I had the same. So then, right at the end, there's a theater, and I'm really tired because you have to stand through the whole thing, and they don't have any chairs. That was the first few months it was open. Then it was very busy. So right at the end, there's a theater, and first time I've been hungry in a long time. I got to go out and eat, and I was there because the FDR Memorial had just opened too, and I was hurried to get there. So I sat down in a theater, and it was a theater about Holocaust survivors surviving the Holocaust. And the film, I was lucky, I got there right at the beginning of the film, and the first people were people talking about arriving at Auschwitz, where they killed 20,000 people a day. And then a voice came describing, we arrived. I remember her first word was we. And as soon as I heard the first syllable of her first word, we, I was like, that's the voice. That was the voice that brought me to Washington. So I listened to her story, and it's one of my books. It's called The Mystics of Auschwitz. And basically what she told me, it's in one of my other books, is The Mystics of Auschwitz. She told me the greatest love story I ever heard in the 20th century. And it took place in Auschwitz. So anyway, finally she was in Auschwitz. She was in the death march at the end, and they had to walk in March in the cold, and there's a couple hundred people, and they find this building, and finally they rest, and there's a well outside, and she wakes up in the morning, and she goes out to the well to bring the water into the other people, and she looks up on the hill, and there's a car with an American flag. Then she knew she was free. So I'm like, great, I can go now. She's fine. She survived the war. I go to get up, and this force pushes me back and says, don't go yet. Fine, okay, I'll sit down. So now at the very end, they're talking about there's American soldiers that liberated concentration camps, and they're talking about their experiences. And this guy's saying, yeah, I was in Austria, and I was stationed in this area, and they gave me a staff car one day, and they told me to just study the area. And he said, you know, I was driving around and down this hill, and then he describes the scene. He said, I could see this big building, and I could see this young girl out by the well. And right beside her was a dead person. And then, so now I know this is the person that liberated the camp. Anyway, have I got time for the rest of the story, or should I tell you to buy the book? 5 minutes? Okay. Okay, so he's sitting there on a couch, and he's telling the story of liberating the camp and meeting, her name was Gerda. And then all of a sudden the camera pans out, and there she is, she's sitting with him. And he said, I talked to her at the well, and she said, we should go inside and help my friends. And so he went inside this building, and now he's liberated a concentration camp, and people that have done that, he said, hundreds of people lying around, dying, emaciated. He said he just went into a total state of shock. He just couldn't function. You know, he was just... And he said, while he's standing there, this young girl stands in the doorway of the building. And she starts reciting a poem, but not just any poem, a Goethe poem, the universe. And it's talking about universal love. And he said, in that instant, I fell in love. And that is one of the greatest stories of the 20th century. I mean, there's probably other great love stories, but nobody can achieve a greater love story. So anyway, part of my vocation now is I wrote a book for the Holocaust Memorial, and I'm suggesting the problem is the film that she did all this, and I knew it was time right at the end of the film. She took control of the film. She sits on the couch, and she leans right into the screen, and she fills the screen, and she says to me, remember, never, never, never give up.